Hey everyone, and welcome to this Explainer. Today, we're diving into something incredibly raw and real. We're unpacking a deeply personal essay written by someone who lived as a total shut-in, a Hikikomori, for 8 long years. Now, this isn't one of those fairy tale overnight success stories. It's actually a pretty uncomfortable, honest look at what happens when severe, prolonged isolation suddenly collides head-on with the outside world. It's a deep dive into the sheer crushing weight of an inferiority complex, but more importantly, it's an absolute masterclass in how to psychologically break free from it. So, if you've ever felt paralyzed by overthinking or, felt like literally everyone else is miles and miles ahead of you in life, this is going to give you a profoundly new framework for how to view your own progress. Okay, let's jump right in.
To really understand the stakes of this story, we have to start with one fundamental question. What actually happens when extreme isolation meets sudden, overwhelming success? Our author had completely 100% withdrawn from society. And then, out of nowhere, they get a New Year's message from an old friend. But we're not talking about just any friend. This is a guy who spent the intervening years transforming into a highly successful, incredibly polished host at a club. Throughout this explainer, we're going to walk chronologically through the intense psychological roller coaster of that single night out, the sheer terror, the brutal reality check, and finally, the life-changing epiphany that came out of it.
Let's just put this timeline into perspective for a second to really grasp the gravity of the situation. 8 years ago, our author completely withdrew from the world, closed the door, shut everyone out. 6 years ago, they took the ultimate step of digital isolation by quietly ghosting their friend group text. They essentially cut off all human contact. For years, just the simple act of replying to a single text message felt impossibly heavy, like a monumental task. Then we hit 2024. A text lights up the author's phone out of the blue. "Happy New Year, want to go get a drink?" It's from that friend they haven't spoken to in over half a decade. Now, under normal circumstances, the author would spend days agonizing over a reply, right? Just building up every excuse not to go. But this time, something was different.
The absolute key to this entire story lies in a psychological concept called execution power. You see, the author had made a quiet, personal New Year's resolution. They desperately wanted to stop overthinking and just execute. When you spend 8 years trapped inside your own bedroom, your brain becomes a master at manufacturing excuses. It will literally build an impenetrable fortress of reasons why you shouldn't step outside. The author realized the only way to break this endless cycle was to bypass the brain entirely. They had to rely on pure execution, literally moving their physical fingers to act before their mind had a single second to build that wall of fear.
And so, with trembling fingers, they typed out a 2-word reply in a matter of seconds. "Let's go." And they hit send. The author describes the immediate aftermath of pressing that send button as this wild mix of sheer terror and utter shock. I mean, they couldn't believe they had just agreed to this without overthinking it. It felt reckless. It was terrifying. But surprisingly, they also noticed a very distinct lack of regret. The decision was made, the execution was done, the only thing left to do was to actually leave the house.
So, fast forward to the actual night of the reunion. The author makes their way to the train station to meet this friend. Now keep in mind, this is someone stepping into the bustling, loud, sensory-rich environment of a city train station after years of hiding from the world. The anticipation is just thick. But the very second they lock eyes with their friend, it isn't just a happy reunion. It is an immediate, breathtaking reality shock. Whatever image the author had of this friend from 6 years ago was instantly shattered by the person actually standing in front of them.
The contrast was, well, it was undeniable. It was night and day. The friend, now working as a high-end host, was entirely transformed. He was just radiating the confidence of a vibrant, successful life. His hair was perfectly styled, his clothes were sharp, and he even carried this refined, expensive scent. And standing right next to him was the author, literally wearing the exact same clothes they had worn for the last 8 years. Because honestly, they hadn't needed to care about their appearance for nearly a decade. Just standing next to this friend in that crowded station, the author felt an immediate, crushing wave of inferiority. The visual gap between their two realities was suffocating.
But despite this massive, terrifying spike in anxiety, they manage to make it to the bar. But as soon as they sit down, a whole new kind of pressure starts building up. The weight of silence. The author isn't just battling their own internal feelings of inadequacy anymore, they're suddenly battling the environment itself. The sensory overload of a crowded, noisy bar after years of absolute quiet is just incredibly intense. And as the conversation starts flowing naturally from the friend's side, the author just completely freezes up, sinking deeper and deeper into their own head.
It was like the environment itself became a trigger. While the friend was effortlessly sharing these amazing stories of traveling and thriving in the city, the author realized with his devastating clarity that they had absolutely zero stories to share in return. Combine that with his intense hyper-awareness of the crowd's judging eyes and the sheer sensory overload of the loud noise and flashing lights, it just forced the author into total silence. They were functioning only as a listener, completely drowning in their own self-hatred.
Seeing his friend completely shut down like this, the host leans in. He looks genuinely worried, and he asks, "Are you okay?" Now, objectively, this is a perfectly normal, incredibly kind thing to ask. But in the highly fragile psychological state of our author, this innocent little question was an absolute gut punch. It was confirmation that their internal panic was totally visible on the outside. The very fact that this successful, polished friend had to stop his fun and worry about them paradoxically accelerated the author's feelings of being pathetic. That kindness just felt incredibly heavy to bear.
And this agonizing downward spiral, it happened fast. It started with that brutal internal realization of having absolutely nothing to say, which quickly morphed into total silence and deep paranoia under the crowd's gaze. By the time they finished just their third beer, the author was entirely depleted. We're talking physically and mentally drained. There was zero energy left in the tank. Even when the friend casually suggested hitting up a second location, the author knew they'd hit a hard limit. The only option left was to apologize, awkwardly cut the night short, and just flee back home. The friend kindly saw them off, but even that grace felt like a heavy burden.
So, the author finally makes it back to the safety of their room, right? They collapse under their bed, staring up at the ceiling. But that wave of relief they were expecting, it never comes. Instead, the dam just breaks. Lying wide awake in the middle of the night, the author is swallowed whole by this massive spiral of regret. All the things they had once dreamed of doing, traveling, living in the city, just effortlessly talking with people, their friend had actually gone out and done them. It felt as if this friend had gathered up all the scattered pieces of the author's own lost future. Suddenly, the phrase 8 years wasn't just some vague concept anymore. It was this terrifying concrete reality pressing down on their chest.
The author is at absolute rock bottom in this moment. The self-hatred is peaking. But incredibly, it is precisely in this dark, sleepless hour that a profound psychological pivot happens. The author asks themselves a truly vital question, one that completely shifts the entire trajectory of the essay. How do we escape the heavy curse of comparison? When you are staring face to face at someone who embodies everything you wish you were, how do you stop that from just destroying you from the inside out?
The crucial shift happened when the author remembered an old, powerful piece of wisdom. If you place your measuring stick against someone else, like comparing yourself to a polished, wildly successful host, you are literally guaranteeing yourself endless anxiety and an inescapable inferiority complex. You will always lose that game. But if you pick up that measuring stick and place it against your own past baseline, everything changes. You stop asking, "Am I better than them?" and you start asking, "Am I further along than I was yesterday?" By shifting the comparison away from the friend and toward their own past self, the author found a solid anchor of peace right in the middle of their panic.
With this totally new perspective, the author begins to reframe the entire night. Yes, the conversation was painfully awkward. Yes, they felt pathetic. Yes, they had to literally run away after 3 beers. But you know what? None of that actually matters when you look at the raw data of the night. The author realized the standalone power of taking action. They hadn't failed. In fact, they had achieved a monumental victory. Why? Because they executed the decision to leave the house. The intense anxiety of the night doesn't erase the physical action they took.
It all boils down to the number 1. That number represents the single step outside the author took. For a shut-in of 8 years, that single step is a massive, concrete, unchangeable fact in the universe. It honestly doesn't matter how ugly or uncomfortable the night was. The author stepped out the door. That is a hard data point of growth that no amount of awkward silence at a bar can ever delete. It is a pure victory of execution.
The author concludes their essay with some seriously empowering takeaways. They realize that action inherently builds confidence, even if the action itself is messy and awkward. The simple fact that you tried goes on your permanent record of personal growth. It cannot be erased by anyone. Ultimately, it's exactly these small, awkward, painful steps that actually break the curse of comparison. The author realizes that if they just keep taking these tiny, imperfect actions, they will slowly walk themselves right out of the prison they've been living in. The goal isn't to be as cool as the friend. The goal is just to be slightly braver than the person who was hiding in their room yesterday.
So I want to leave you with this final thought, directly inspired by the author's hard-won epiphany. It's so incredibly easy to look at the polished lives of everyone around us and feel like we are failing. But if you took the author's advice today If you completely stopped measuring your success against your peers and instead only measured it against who you were a year ago or even just yesterday, what hidden victories would you find? What messy, awkward actions have you taken that actually prove you are moving forward? Keep executing, keep taking that one step, and let go of all the rest. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this shift in perspective serves you as powerfully as it served the author.